I'm Richard Kilgariff talking to Scott Belsky at the Hospital Club. We're hot off the presentation you've just made to our members and the members of the Like Minds community. It was great, thank you. Can you just, in a very oversimplified way, give us the sort of top 3 bullet points on how to make ideas happen?
Oh, wow, in a nutshell.
Yeah, you've just done an hour, can you do it in like 30 seconds?
30 seconds. Listen, ideas don't happen because they're great or by accident. And we were talking today all about what are the other forces at play behind great ideas that actually see the light of day. There are some teams and individuals that somehow, some way are able to consistently defy the odds and just execute and make ideas happen again and again and again. We talked about how organization and execution is huge, and that organization is a competitive advantage in the creative world, and how some of the greatest creative leaders operate with a bias towards action. They're constantly sort of filtering their every day with what's actionable and what's not. They're measuring the value of meetings and what's actionable, and they're even not meeting when there's nothing actionable that will come out of it. And really thinking also about prioritization and how to manage our energy. We talked about how to leverage community to gain traction around ideas, and how it all comes down to sharing ideas liberally and boosting accountability and pacing yourself. I mean, even though we typically feel like the creative industry around us is really of our peers and colleagues, there are also people that we can pace ourselves with. And it's weird to think about the notion of competition in the creative world, but it's a very powerful force. How we can market ourselves more effectively without looking like we're serial self-promoters. You know, how do we overcome the stigma of self-marketing so people actually know what we're capable of? And then the last piece we talked about, which I think is always worthy of more discussion, is how to be better leaders of creative projects and teams. There's a void of leadership capability in the creative world, which is why most ideas never happen. And talking about how we can be better leaders of teams and build the right chemistry for a great execution of ideas. All things we need to talk about and think about.
The first of those points and the last of those points will resonate a lot with the people who are watching this, who work in creative businesses. And I think that the idea of organisation would gain a lot of traction in many buildings. But when you get to the point about sharing ideas, I think often certainly in businesses where ideas are property,
sure,
you might be led and escorted from the building for asking them to, especially you in the offices of Coca-Cola or Procter & Gamble, and you're going around everyone to share their ideas. Well, is that the sticking point in your principles? Is that the sticking point in your plan in how to make ideas happen?
Well, I think it's a matter of knowing our own tendencies as creative people. We're always constantly coming up with more and more ideas. It's the idea to idea syndrome, because there's this high, this intoxication when we come up with something new that is extremely energizing, but then we kind of move on to another one, and then because we're addicted to that high. And when you come up with a new idea, the other problem you're up against is the gravitational force of operations. You have a great brainstorm, you have something you want to make happen, then you get back to your everyday grind, and you lose it. And so oftentimes, the only way we can stick with an idea long enough to make it happen is if other people know about it and are refining it
even
constantly.
If they steal it.
And so here's the thing, like maybe the benefits outweigh the costs. Yes, if you share your idea liberally, perhaps someone will steal it. But I would say that if it's so easily stolen by someone hearing it, probably wasn't a good idea to begin with. It definitely wouldn't have been scalable. I mean, people are going to have to know about your idea eventually. Or you may not want to share your idea because it isn't fully baked yet. You don't feel like it's ready for prime time. But again, you need to know your tendency that if you don't share it, you're likely to just move on anyways. And to give your idea any chance of happening, the benefits outweigh the cost from sharing it.
So in for a penny.
Yeah, exactly.
And finally, you're obviously working on the East Coast in the States. You're from New York. Have you found, I know you've only been here a short time, but have you found in the past any differences between creative communities and cultures between here and New York?
It's interesting. I feel like New York and London have similarities versus, say, San Francisco, where there's sometimes you're just generating ideas for the hell of it. In the technology world especially, you see people kind of doing cool things just because it's cool versus the more pragmatic, I'm generating ideas to solve a problem. I think that's a good, healthy, there's a healthy cynicism perhaps, that I see as a parallel between creatives in New York and London versus other places perhaps. But and then a lot of the same obstacles, of course, that we face as well. But the one sort of special challenge I see sometimes in Europe, though, is the fear of failure. You know, in the States, failure these days is more seen as a badge of honor. You tried something, you took a bold risk, and you failed. You learned from it. I'm going to give you another opportunity. Versus sometimes, you know, where I talk to people in London and other parts of, and in Europe, where folks say, you know, failure actually sets you really back. You know, it limits the opportunity you'll get in the future, and therefore people have they're less likely to take risk, which is a problem because we know innovation is all about rapid iteration and really failing until you succeed, and then building upon that success. So we need to increase our tolerance of risk and a willingness to fail.
Well, you haven't failed in impressing us over here. Thank you, Scott, for joining us. And the book's called Making Ideas Happen, and it's available in all good bookshops, I believe.
Hopefully.
Thanks, Scott. Cheers.
Take care.